Since 2018, I've spent over 9,000 hours helping one on one clients make confident decisions with their money. And at least once a week, I get the same question: what should I do first? Pay down debt, build an emergency fund, or invest for retirement? They all seem important, and they are. So, in this video, I'll show you a simple decision making flowchart that I use with my clients so you can stop guessing and put your money to work with clarity. Let's take a look at my flowchart here, which, by the way, you can get a copy of using the link down below. Step zero, which is the foundation for everybody, is to stop creating new debt. We want to ask the question: what got us into debt in the first place? Was this something totally outside our control, like a freak medical accident or a truly once in a lifetime event? Or was it something that we just need to plan better for, like auto maintenance or home maintenance or Christmas spending? Or was it really just general consumer spending? This step is all about building a budget we can stick with and planning for the things that would typically throw somebody off. And it's critical. Trying to pay off debt or invest for the future while we're still creating new debt, it's like pouring water into a bucket with a whole bunch of holes in it. It doesn't matter how much water we pour into this thing. If we've got tons of holes in the bottom, we're not going to accomplish anything. Practically speaking, this means we need to get a budget in place so that we know exactly how much we earn and how much we spend, and then create a gap. It's this gap between what we spend and what we earn that we'll be using for the rest of this flowchart. Now, this gap might be really small right now, but that's okay. We've all got to start somewhere. And if you're interested in building a budget to help you grow your gap, then check out the other videos on my channel. I talk about this all the time. That said, once we've got a budget that's helping us avoid new debt and we've created a gap, the question is, what do we do with that extra money? And that's what the rest of this flowchart is going to tell us. And the first step is getting the full employer match at work. The reason we do this first, even before paying off high interest credit card debt, is because it's literally free money. Think about it this way. If you have a credit card with interest of 30% and you pay $1,000, then you save $300. Pretty sweet. But if you take that same $1,000 and contribute to your employer's retirement account, and they match 100%, giving you another $1,000, well, that's $700 more than what you would have saved by paying the credit card. I'll take that $700, please. Not to mention, that's just the immediate match. This money is also going to get invested and might earn us an extra 6, 7, or 8% over time. And even if the employer only matches 50% up to a certain amount, well, that's still a better deal. Unless the debt is over 50% interest or the employer just has a really lousy match, it makes sense to contribute enough to get the match first. Now, once we've done that, we're not going to invest any more right now. We're going to move on to step number 2, which is to get one paycheck ahead in your budget or build an emergency fund equal to one paycheck. Before we pay off debt, we need to build a little buffer for ourselves. Some people call this an emergency fund. I like thinking about it in terms of how many paychecks ahead I am or how many months ahead I am. In this case, I don't think we need to get a full month of emergency money, but I do like to get at least one paycheck ahead. Now, for some of you, if you only get paid once a month, that might mean a full month ahead. But for most people, it's probably getting 1 or 2 weeks worth of income in the bank. Now, the reason I like doing this is twofold. The first is that by getting a paycheck ahead, we're no longer worried about overdrafting a bank account or stressing about when certain bills might need to get paid. So it eases our mindset around money. The second is that this acts as a small emergency fund. And so, although we're starting to work irregular things into the budget, like auto maintenance and home maintenance and Christmas spending, this extra paycheck creates a buffer so that if something comes up, we can deal with it without debt. The reason I like doing this before aggressively paying down debt is that this stops the debt yo-yo cycle. Before working with me, many of my clients throw as much money as possible at their debt every single payday. But they neglect getting a paycheck ahead. And so they're often so eager to pay off this credit card debt that they don't leave enough money to cover groceries or bills or unexpected things that typically come up. Then they're forced to create new debt just to deal with these normal life expenses. And this is so mentally defeating. And to be honest, many people give up when they find themselves in the cycle. By getting a paycheck ahead, we stop yo-yoing and know that as we pay down our debt from here, there's no going back. Now, some people might say that because of credit card interest, it's mathematically better to pay as much as possible and then just charge the new debt if needed. but I've helped a lot of clients get debt free, and I've never seen anyone who tries to do this do it successfully, which is why I'm so adamant about my clients getting a paycheck ahead before directing their attention to their debt. So once we've done this, we can move on to step number 3, which is to pay off our high interest debt, specifically the debt over 10%. You'll see on my flow chart that you should choose between the debt snowball or the debt avalanche method when it comes to choosing how to attack this debt. But I actually want to show you a third option that I prefer, which is something I call the modified debt snowball. So when I'm working with a client and we've got some debt to pay off, the first thing we'll do is typically create a little spreadsheet that just organizes all the debts. You can see here's all the names. I've got a few credit cards, a personal bank loan, medical debt, car, mortgage, and a student loan. We've got all the balances listed here, the interest rates, and the minimum payments. Once we get all this information gathered, we then need to look at the method to pay these down. The debt snowball method is probably the most popular method. And if you don't know how this works, basically you organize your debts from the lowest balance to the highest balance. And then you make minimum payments on everything except the first one. So all of these, we're just paying the minimum monthly payment, and then we're throwing our gap at this one. The idea is to attack this lowest balance debt and pay it off quickly, build some momentum, and then use what you were paying to this one and move on to the next one and focus all your energy there. Then once that one's done, move on to the next, and so on and so forth. Now, the other popular strategy for paying off debt would be something called the debt avalanche. This is where we organize the debts instead of based on the balances, based on the interest rates. So this method is all about trying to make sure you pay the least amount of interest. We pay off the highest interest rate first, then move on to the next one and the next one and so on. Still using the same idea of only paying the minimums on everything else except the number one priority you're focused on. Now, I like both of these methods, although I'm a little partial to the debt snowball, but both of these methods can sometimes have funny things happen. For example, in this debt snowball right here, if I strictly go on the lowest balances, once I knock out this Discover card, I'm then going to move on to this medical debt. But the medical debt is sitting at 0%. I don't know that I really want to focus my energy on this one. I'd probably rather move on to like the Chase Freedom card at that point. So with the debt snowball, sometimes you can kind of get stuck paying down a really, really low interest debt just because it's the next lowest balance. On the debt avalanche side though, sometimes like in this example, you might be having to pay this Amex card first, which is $11,000. And although it is the highest interest rate, this can feel really defeating. It's going to take us a long time to pay down that $11,000 card, and I'm not going to build any momentum out of the gate. This is generally why most people do like the debt snowball method, because you're able to lick some of these low balance debts really quickly, and it gets very rewarding as you're going. The one change I like to make with my modified debt snowball is I group the debts by interest rate. Basically, anything over 10% I put together, and then I snowball that. Then I group my medium interest rates and my low interest rates together, which we'll get to those later on in the flowchart. By doing it this way, I kind of get the best of both worlds. I get to build momentum and focus on my low balances, but I'm knocking out all the high interest rate stuff first. Now, once we've paid off this high interest debt, we're ready to move on to step number 4, which is to get 1 full month ahead. Now, that's 1 month's worth of income and savings, or if I'm working with a business owner or somebody with irregular income, I'll encourage them to go for 3 months worth of income and savings. The idea here is that now that we've knocked out our high interest debt, before moving on to some of the other debts we might have, I want to really shore up the savings. This further solidifies the foundation we're building so that we never go into credit card debt again. When I'm trying to figure out how much my clients should save at this step, it really depends on how stable their income is. If I'm talking to a tenured professor that basically can't get fired with super stable income, then I might suggest to just get 1 month ahead before moving on to the next step. After all, we can always come back and build up more savings down the road if we want to. But if I'm working with a business owner or someone in sales or some other unstable industry, I want them to build up at least 3 months of income and potentially up to 6 months in some cases. For me and my business, I feel comfortable at the 3-month mark for now. And once we've built up that extra hedge of protection, we're ready for step number 5. As a quick aside here, steps 5 and 6 have a lot of nuance to them. And I'm about to give my general advice for what to prioritize. But in reality, my recommendations to clients are very specific to their situation. Sometimes we do step 5 before 6, and other times we'll do 6 before 5. And sometimes we do a little bit of both. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to speak broadly. So, step number 5 is to pay off medium interest debt. That's between 5 and 10%. So, for our example we looked at earlier, that's going to be this personal bank loan, the car loan, and the student loan. Now, this is typically where people start to question whether they should be investing more in their retirement funds or continuing to pay down debt aggressively. The way I think about this is that the compound annual growth rate of the US stock market is somewhere in the 5 to 7% range after inflation. So, when considering paying off medium interest debt, the basic question is, would I take a guaranteed savings of paying off debt at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, or would I like to get a possible return in the stock market of 7 to 8%? And since I don't have a crystal ball and know whether this year is going to be a blowout year or not, I'm generally going to recommend taking the guaranteed debt paydown. Now, there is a caveat to this one, and it's typically for higher income folks who live in high income tax states and who are looking to get a tax deduction for their retirement contributions. The potential tax deduction they might get of 20 to 30% on their investments might make it worth prioritizing retirement investments over this medium interest debt and just paying it down a little bit slower over time. In my example, if I were someone that would benefit from the tax deduction, I might pay off this personal loan here and then the car loan. And then I would consider this student loan as part of the low interest section and move on to step number 6. So, although this flow chart captures my general recommendations, there's always room for nuance. That being said, for the average person, you're not going to go wrong by paying off this medium interest debt. Once we've knocked that out, we're ready to move on to step number 6, which is to invest more for retirement with the goal of getting to 15% of our gross income. Now, when a client gets here, they could just ratchet up their retirement contributions at work, and that's fine. But for tax and investment optimization, we typically consider a few other options first. In the US, you've got employer sponsored plans like 401ks, 403bs, and 457s. You've also got some special military or pension based retirement plans. And then you've got HSAs, which are health savings account, although I treat them and think of them ideally as retirement accounts. And then, of course, IRAs. And if you want to get fancy, many of these accounts can change the tax treatment between traditional or Roth. Now, I'm not going to explain all the differences of these different accounts and traditional versus Roth in this video, but all of these accounts have tax advantages to help you save for retirement. And generally, you want to maximize these accounts when possible before moving on to a general brokerage investment account. Let me show you an example of what that might look like. So for this couple, they make $150,000 a year combined income. You'll notice that the first thing we're going to do is make sure we're getting that 401k match at work, just like we talked about earlier. Now, from there, we're then going to prioritize the HSA. That's the health savings account. Now, not everybody will qualify for one of these, but if you do, they're awesome because they're triple taxed advantage, which is one of the reasons that we'd probably want to max that out next. After that, if we've still got money we're looking to invest, we're going to maybe look at these Roth IRAs. In this case, I've went ahead and said that this couple is going to max those out as well. Now, for many people, they're not going to have enough money to keep going, but for this couple, they do. And so what are we going to do next? Well, we're going to go back to the work-sponsored 401k plan and just load up some money in there. Now, right now in 2026, the 401k max limit is $24,500 a year. This couple is not going to hit that, so this is where they would stop. But let's say that you were able to max that out and you still had money you were looking to invest. At that point, we would move on to a regular brokerage account. And once we're investing at least 15% of our gross household income, we're ready to move on to the final step, which is to save and invest for our other long-term goals based on our vision. This is where things get really fun. At this point, it's totally up to the client. We might want to accelerate their retirement or maybe increase their giving, or prepare for some larger purchases like a wedding or college funds or new cars. But it really comes down to the vision that we create and what makes sense for the individual based on their own life goals. And if you'd like help creating your vision, then watch this video next.